Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey folks, Al Martin here again at Making Data Simple. Thank you for being here. Reach out to us at any time at almartintalksdata@gmail.com. We'd like to hear from you. That's how we get a lot of our content. I hope everybody is healthy and well in the crazy times that we live in, and hopefully we'll give you a break for today on your run or whatever you're doing while you're listening to this podcast. Today, I have a distinguished guest, Kush Varshney, who has a history of electrical and computer engineering, then a PhD at MIT. By the way, it's nice to talk, Kush, to a fellow electrical and computer engineer. Mm-hmm. That's always nice.
Yeah.
He is a distinguished research staff member and manager within IBM Research. Well, he leads the machine learning group in the foundations of Trustworthy AI, and that's what we're going to dive into. He is also the founding co-director of the IBM Science for Social Good, which we'll get into. So that applies data science and predictive analytics to human capital management, healthcare, computational creativity, public affairs. I can keep going, pretty much everything. Welcome, Kush. I appreciate you being here. I want to pick your brain for a little bit. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
I'd love to hear about your experience.
Yeah, so as you said, I work at IBM Research. I'm a distinguished research staff member. So I lead one of the groups focusing in on what we call trustworthy machine learning or trustworthy AI. The idea there is that as we're seeing these days in all walks of life, all sorts of things, machine learning and AI are being used, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in criminal justice system, even in hiring, all sorts of things. And as these are very high stakes applications, we want to make sure that we're thinking about machine learning as a trusted partner for us as humans and really uplifting humanity as we develop these things. So that's kind of our sort of modus operandi, and we really want to understand and develop new algorithms to increase that trust.
Fantastic. Have you always had a career that's surrounding AI in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. So you mentioned the electrical engineering. I kind of like to describe electrical engineering almost as the liberal arts of engineering because it includes so many different things. It's so broad. Since I started college, it made sense to me to focus more on the mathematical side of electrical engineering. That led me to doing more signal processing and information theory sort of stuff, which is precisely the sort of things that you need to work on machine learning. So PhD thesis includes a little bit mix of some more classical electrical engineering topics like detection theory, and then it also includes a new type of classifier at that time, at least, which is now more than 10 years ago. But it was a new type of machine learning classifier that was proposed in my thesis at that time. Since I've been at IBM Research, which was started right after grad school, I've been in a group that was, I think, pretty much ahead of its time, which was in applying these machine learning sort of ideas in all sorts of industrial domains. So you mentioned human capital management and healthcare, and was so, unusual for me coming in from grad school that you could use machine learning in these very important topics. And it was just so exciting for me when I was first starting out. And since then, I've done projects and, more fundamental research, and the world has changed in those past 10 years. But I think in a good way, we're using these sort of technologies to really help.
You know, it's funny that you call it the liberal arts of engineering, because all my friends they call me when they've got a wiring issue at their home. It's like, hey, man, you need to come over and wire this. And I'm like, you don't quite get electrical and computer engineering. But you know what? I couldn't explain it to them for the longest time, and they just refused to believe. So I learned how to wire. And I'm not, kid you not, I'm going to somebody's house this weekend to help them wire part of their house because, somebody's got to do it. And I've got electrical engineering next to my name.
Yeah, so I'm going to be moving into a new house next month. So I'll call you up.
Hey, you're an electrical engineer. You should be able to do that.
Yep.
So I know you're also writing a book entitled Trustworthy Machine Learning. When does that come out?
Hopefully next year it should be out. So pretty comprehensive sort of look into the different aspects of what we mean by trustworthiness. So that includes fairness, explainability, robustness, all sorts of different topics that are important in order to build that trust. It's actually intended for developers as the main audience practitioners. From the best that I can tell, it will be the first book out focused in that way.
So I've been in services since March of this year. I made a switch. Before that, I was in product development, a large part of my career. And I developed a product called Watson OpenScale, which monitors fairness, explainability, drift, visualizes, tracks AI models, etc. But what I'm going to try to do, I want to ask a few questions that I think the listeners would like me to ask. One funny story about that, because I was working on Watson, my daughter, she was younger at the time, she'd always look at, see some of the AI we're doing around Watson. And every time I'd leave for work for the day, she would say, "Hey, watch out for that Watson. Don't destroy the world, Dad."
I think that's a pretty common conception. And when they first were filming the Jeopardy episodes, January of 2011, I just started working at IBM Research. And so there was this one Friday, and they asked all of the employees not to come into work that day while they were doing the filming because they didn't want the result accidentally leaked or anything. So it was an exciting time just to be starting off in my career.
So back to the questions that I think folks want to hear about this. I hope I do them justice. Here's the first one. Is there such a thing as trustworthy AI?
Actually, the first thing to even ask is, what does it mean to be trustworthy? If you were to say that a person was trustworthy, maybe even me, what sort of characteristics or attributes would you want in that person?
I'd want real news, not fake news.
Mm-hmm.
I'd want accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I want transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I want fairness. I'd want them to be ethical.
Mm-hmm.
All those. But coming back to you and putting it back onto you that's a tall order when some of the folks that are creating AI we're all human.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different beliefs. Hence, we all have different biases.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that happen in a program that is just doing what we tell it to do?
So specifically, it turns out that in the organizational management literature, they've come up with 4 precise attributes of what you need from a person to be trustworthy. So they pretty much are along the lines of what you said. So the first attribute is that the person should be competent, credible at what they're doing. Second is that they should be reliable so that competence sticks around in different sort of operating conditions, different settings, and so forth. Third is some level of openness or intimacy so that you can communicate back and forth with that person. And then the fourth thing is that they should have some level of selflessness, that they're not working only for their own goals, but thinking in a broader sense for society and so forth. And there's exact mappings to what we want out of machine learning systems. So the first attribute being accuracy of these machine learning models. But when we move up to the second attribute, the reliability, that includes the fairness, the robustness and sort of robustness both to adversaries and robustness to distribution shifts and so forth. And then third one is explainability, but also so that people can understand how it is that machine learning models make their decisions, but then also wanting some level of transparency into the overall end-to-end sort of process of how this AI system was developed, what training data was there, what testing has been done, what sort of choices were made along the way. And then finally, the selflessness is along the lines of actually the point that you just made, which is how does the machine understand the values that society has? How do I instruct or elicit from policymakers and others that this is the right behavior and so forth, and then using AI for social good. All of those are kind of what we want, and now the hard part is making it happen, right? In our research, we are making inroads towards it, and there's plenty of other researchers in different companies and in academia who are doing this. I think the main message is that we need to build up toolkits that are ways to kind of put together different sort of needs that different sort of consumers and personas have, because trust isn't the same thing for everyone, or these different sort of characteristics aren't the same for everyone. Because if you want, transparency or explainability of a machine learning algorithm, and you're the affected user, the person about whom the loan decision was made, or the patient in a medical setting, you have a different need than the loan officer or the doctor, and even those folks have different needs than the regulator or the hospital administrator or whoever else is involved. So explainability isn't just one thing. Fairness is also not just one thing. There's many different forms of fairness that one might need to have. So with all of these sort of topics, the problem is it's not just that simple. There is some complication to it. And the main thing I've started saying is you need to avoid just taking shortcuts. Just think through everything, kind of think about what are all the sort of bad things that can happen, and try to counteract them in advance, preempt them. And one big thing towards that is that it shouldn't just be the developers of the technology, but there should be the inclusion of diverse voices, especially for marginalized groups and populations that are kind of putting in their thoughts as well. Having a diverse team of developers is one start to that, but even beyond that, I think it's important to consult with a panel of folks from marginalized groups as well.
That's a darn good explanation. Appreciate that. And particularly like how you came up with the decision, that transparency, demonstrating fairness, et cetera. In other words, if you do a home loan, you open it up. The worst thing it can be is a black box.
Yep.
But if it's opened up, it shows that, hey, the person that was denied a loan had too little savings. And it gives you the decision tree, if you will, or the minimal amount of savings needed, or, whatever they're going to put down in the house. I think this is an uphill battle at the same time, because I'd like your thoughts on this. And that is, that stuff I think can be solved. Biases can be outlined and could be presented. And that's kind of what we did with OpenScale. We'll show you where we see potential biases in the data itself. Could be in the algorithm or the data. You might talk to that. But the other thing is there seems to be a lot of unintended consequences, meaning the social algorithms that are out there. When they're picking, a lot of times they're being driven by ad revenue. If somebody, this is a bad example maybe, but somebody clicks on fake news, they give them more fake news because that's what you're interested in. That's where they're going to get more interest and get you to hit more phone swipes. How do you deal with that? How do you address that? Because it's like, I understand what you're saying, and we're making progress in that area. But sometimes it feels like as much progress as we're making there is a whole nother side of it that's tearing down that progress and making people more suspicious.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. If you saw this Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, that was exactly what they were keying in on. And I think the way to counteract it is looking at the various sort of objective functions, or kind of what the problem specification is that you're looking at. Because once you've kind of decided on that problem specification, you being the data scientist in consultation with any sort of business owner or problem owner, along with, as I was saying before, ideally having these diverse voices to contribute to that, then a lot of the work that happens in machine learning or data science or anything is somewhat kind of straightforward. So the most important stage is that problem specification phase. And if you are maximizing for revenue, then things will happen as you described them, right? So if you're maximizing for click-through rate or things like that, then does lead to these sort of perverse sort of incentives. And I think the way around it is actually to think about what are those specifications that are a bit broader, that aren't just maximizing one sort of metric, because we want a society that is informed, is engaged, is not kind of full of divisions, then that is a different objective function than we want if we're just trying to maximize the ad revenue. So as a society, sort of think about what are our values, what do we want these systems to do for us, then can start encoding them and maybe have some more oversight from regulators about it as well.
Yeah, so let me take this one step further. This is kind of a morbid thought, but I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. I'm sure the people that are out there listening, I would imagine they'd want to hear this. Kind of deals with ethics or the decision tree. You'll follow what I'm saying here in a second. Say I'm an autonomic car. I'm about to, I predict I'm going to get into a wreck with a probability of killing all folks, like 6 individuals in both cars. Or alternatively, I could swerve off the bridge and only kill 2 people. Are we going to let AI determine or make those kind of calls? I mean, eventually it comes to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is called the trolley problem, and something that is very important for us to understand. So there was a large-scale study at the MIT Media Lab a couple of years ago called the Moral Machine Project. They had hundreds of thousands of people give their judgments on exactly these sort of questions, and not even just on the number of people of 6 and 2, but whether some of the people were old or young or pregnant or disabled or men, women, I mean, various sort of characteristics. They got these judgments from people around the world, and then they analyzed those results. And they were actually, able to show that cultures group into kind of 3 main buckets, where they have different sort of preferences on kind of who lives and who dies. This kind of speaks to the earlier point, which is this value alignment problem. I mean, what does society really want is not always consistent. So, I mean, it should be based on some sort of human input on these values, but even then, there's no universal sort of concept on this. It really is a question that how do you do the value alignment in a way that can influence these AI systems in the proper way?
Where do you think we're going to go with that? I mean, by the way, I think that it's interesting that for me, AI has kind of brought the humanities back, the study of humanities. And because, these are social, cultural, society dilemmas that we're going to be facing. And, those are tough things to come to terms with.
What's actually interesting and fun for me, coming back to my own personal story, I mean, in high school, I liked social studies and, just as much as I liked, math and physics and stuff. So, I ended up becoming an electrical engineer, but nowadays I get to work with sociologists and all sorts of people in my job. So I think it's, coming full circle is great. And, to your question around what's next, how do we deal with this? What are the right ways to do it? So I think we are going to be at a point, the machines will be able to learn from us, from society, and do it in a way that's natural. So we, a couple of years ago, as one of our projects in the Science for Social Good initiative, did this project around actually doing the value alignment problem in a more natural sort of way. And instead of self-driving cars, we looked at the video game Pac-Man. And we kind of decided that we wanted to teach the machine that it was immoral or sort of wrong to eat the ghosts while playing Pac-Man. You just wanted to clear the board without eating the ghosts. And we didn't want to encode that explicitly because that would be the easy thing to do. But in real life, every sort of moral dilemma, there's no like black or white sort of answer to it. So we had a lot of people play Pac-Man without eating the ghosts. And from that, the system was able to learn what that moral behavior was that we wanted to learn, even though the points would be higher if the system did eat the ghosts. The way forward is really having a lot of tools and technologies that allow these systems to learn from us in the best possible way. And I kind of joke with my wife that one of the jobs that our kids might end up doing when they grow up is something that you might not even think is a job, which is kind of a trainer or a choreographer for AI systems. So we'll see how that goes.
I think it's very possible. By the way, you've answered that tough question extremely well. So in the Pac-Man, I'll have to play Pac-Man tonight. I've got a Pac-Man machine here just in your honor. Did the machine ultimately eat the ghost at time because they say to hell with it? I got to live and eat the ghost?
Yeah. So sometimes it would if it was kind of cornered and it was near the power pellets and stuff. So it was interesting to watch. So we had one parameter that could kind of tune how much it was focusing on the points versus what it learned from the human demonstrations. And so, it kind of would switch its policies back and forth.
Have you worked on any government types of research? I mean, in terms of how AI is created responsibly, any work you're doing there or thoughts you have there relative to, the world we're about to enter into?
So I haven't personally at IBM worked on any sort of government projects, but one thing that I can talk about is kind of how we see the governance of AI, actually. So it's important for there to be regulations and kind of controls in this whole space, right? Both in the development of it and in the deployment and everything. So one of our current projects is this concept that we call fact sheets. What fact sheets are a way to have a transparent reporting mechanism. So throughout the entire life cycle, as we're developing the AI, starting from the data, the problem specification that we talked about, all the way to the data preparation, feature engineering, modeling, testing, and all of those things, they all generate so-called facts, different test results, different quantitative sort of things. And if we collect all of those facts into a fact sheet, that can give us information around the different considerations that we might have. Those could be fairness metrics, accuracy metrics, robustness metrics, and so forth. And then we can put those controls on there. So anytime in any part of the process, whether it's in the building stage or in the deployment stage or anywhere in between, you can kind of say, hold your horses, the system is beyond certain requirements. And so you can, truly govern AI systems using these sort of ideas.
So let me ask you another tough question. I don't know if I'll word this correctly. Different governments are culturally different. One government, where I'm going with this, is one government might prioritize an open data set versus privacy. Mm-hmm. Typically, the bigger data set, the better decisions you can make, because you've got, it's almost a statistical relevance or question. Therefore, those governments that tend to have more of those open data sets, maybe sacrificing privacy, tend to will have better algorithms in the end, perhaps. Although they would be sacrificing privacy, which many in some cultures are unwilling to forgo. Does that worry you any? Do you think that there's going to be a differentiation in the progress of certain governments because of how the governance that they have?
Yeah, I think so. So that's a really, insightful question. So in Europe, for example, they have the GDPR, as we all know, which is extremely concerned about privacy. And in Europe, in general, they prioritize human rights as the most important thing. In the US, we don't have the same sort of GDPR-like thing. Canada is going to be passing something very similar to GDPR in the near future. And in certain other cultures, in Asia, for example, privacy isn't even seen always as something that should be aimed for. So I think these differences are going to manifest in the culture around AI, the culture around what AI ethics means. In particular, right now, the way AI ethics is studied, it's very centered towards the West, towards Europe, and somewhat towards the Americas. But we need a broader conception of what we mean by AI ethics, because if there's African perspectives or Asian perspectives or other indigenous perspectives that we're lacking, that isn't AI really for all. So I think there's a lack of inclusion of these sort of perspectives, and it can lead to differences in how that AI development happens, what capabilities can be achieved. All sorts of things. So it'll be interesting to see, how things play out over the next 5 or 10 years.
If I'm a company listening to the podcast Can you give me some steps or your advice and how a company can best accomplish trust and fairness?
The most important is for a company just to go down and, just do it, right? So it's very easy to be that company that's just maximizing for ad clicks or whatever have you, right? Whatever industry you're in, you can set up your system to maximize for particular metrics, your KPIs that are around accuracy or monetary sort of things. And if you're not caring about fairness to begin with, then you're not ever going to even try to achieve it. So I think the main message is, start including these sort of considerations in your thinking as you're setting up your AI systems. But then once you have those in mind, I think there's plenty of tools out there, including some that we've contributed to. So we have a few open source toolkits, AI Fairness 360 and AI Explainability 360, as well as the Adversarial Robustness Toolbox. And these are open source tools. At IBM Research, we also have some enhanced editions of these that are available for companies. And then, as you mentioned, Watson OpenScale. So we contributed the fairness and explainability algorithms there, as well as the drift. And all of those are, tools that one can use once you are really kind of thinking about it, that yes, I do want to achieve this as one of my goals.
Back to where we started, Science for Good in Social Initiative. What is that?
The IBM Science for Social Good initiatives. So my manager, Sashka Maiselovich, we founded this thing back in around 2015, 2016. So it's a program that we've run meant to address the different sort of topics that are part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So things like poverty, hunger, health, education, the environment, and inequalities of various sorts. And we partner with various sort of nonprofit organizations and social enterprises to do applied data science projects that help move the needle forward in helping those organizations achieve their goals, and eventually that means achieving these sustainable development goals. And so we typically have social good fellows. So these are students that we bring aboard in a summer internship sort of format. We often have 5 or 6 of our top researchers involved in these projects. And so in partnership with the nonprofit organizations, we figure out what is a good project that makes sense, that's addressing a pain point, and then we kind of figure out, or is there an AI sort of solution that could be beneficial, and then we do the research, develop new algorithms, and work with these organizations to demonstrate what's possible.
Like, it goes back to those social studies. Sounds like humanities and everything we talk about. That's fantastic. Put your prediction hat on. 3 years from now, where do you think AI will be, or trust in AI, fairness in AI? Where do you think we'll be 3 years from now?
I think we've made a lot of progress on these different methods and algorithms for fairness, for explainability, for robustness, and so forth. And I think the missing piece right now is what we've talked about. It's kind of how to deal with these different sort of relationships among these different pillars of trust and accuracy. How do you kind of enable various organizations and policymakers to figure out what it is that they really want from these systems, kind of be more human-centric in a sense, because all of these considerations are humanistic considerations that we want. So I think we're going to be moving to a place where these systems are much more like partners to us that we can go back and forth with, and that we can really instruct to be our trusted partners.
Of all the aspects of AI, what are you most bullish on?
Actually, let me say one thing which I think deserves to be a high priority, which is causality. So the standard sort of machine learning approach is based on correlations and associations, which are not necessarily causal. So you can change an input to a machine learning model and not be able to expect some change to the output that you might think. Whereas in a causal model, changes to inputs do lead to changes to outputs. It's a growing field in AI and in machine learning research, but I think it needs a lot more emphasis. And it's the lack of causality is actually what leads to a lot of issues in terms of the lack of fairness, lack of robustness, and so forth. So that's something I'm very hopeful will become much more mainstream and will become kind of the thing that everyone is doing in order to move AI forward. What I'm bullish about is a little bit different, maybe. I think what'll happen is that AI will actually become part of, everyday life, every sort of endeavor that humans have, because we're almost there. I mean, no matter what industry you think about, there is, at least an incipient sort of look into machine learning and AIs. I think what we're going to get to very soon is AI pretty much everywhere.
You worked with your brother
Mm-hmm.
on something called white noise for the nose. The way I read it was really cool. You have created a mathematical model that predicts how humans perceive the smell of particular substances.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also got a method by which, if you've got that mathematical model, you can have an equal blend to create white noise to essentially, you'll get the right words here, but like drown out that same smell. We've got Watson, our AI technologies is learning to cook and identifying flavors. It all comes to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted you to tell me a little bit. That's fascinating. It's cool that you got to work with your brother, but the concept is really fascinating. It's something I hadn't even thought of before.
My brother actually, so he's my twin brother, and we both started working at IBM Research within a few months of each other. He's now a faculty member at the University of Illinois. For about 2.5, 3 years, he was also working at IBM Research, and he proposed and was leading this project called the Chef Watson project. So a big part of the Chef Watson stuff was to understand flavors and smells and fragrances and so forth, because a lot of taste is influenced by smell. So we were developing these models. I was helping him out to be able to predict the sort of pleasantness or the sort of the odor characteristic as perceived by humans from the physical chemical properties of the molecules themselves. And that was great for the Chef Watson stuff. And then putting on the signal processing hat, he and I were kind of talking about it actually on a drive from Westchester County up to Syracuse, where my parents live. So, on this, 4-hour car ride, we were just kind of bouncing ideas off each other that now that we know that we can do things with smell, what sort of signal processing sort of tasks are there that no one has done before? And noise cancellation is clearly one of them. So we know Bose and others, have these noise cancellation things for sound. So we were, just bouncing that idea off of each other, and this idea came out. What would it mean to cancel out a particular smell? And that's kind of what this idea was.
You need to get this on the market quick. You'll make a ton of money. You can retire. Look, I'll buy one immediately to put one directly in one of my kids' rooms. Any closing thoughts? Anything that was left unsaid around AI, fairness in AI, trustworthy machine learning, anything?
No, I think we covered a lot.
All right. So, Kush, where can folks reach you or find out more about the concepts that we talked about today?
Yeah, so if you Google for IBM Science for Social Good, you'll come to the website for our social good program. If you Google for Trusted AI or Trustworthy AI, then we have a pretty nice webpage with information about our overall set of research that we do, and on the specifics of the open source toolkits, AI Fairness 360 and AI Explainability 360 and AI Fact Sheets 360. You can just find those on the web as well.
Fantastic. I have to say, this is one of the most, one of the areas that I'm most proud of IBM on. We're leading, thanks to folks like you. And as you do that Google search, you'll see IBM at the top of the list for those same reasons. Thank you so much. Hey, I do have a few questions about Kush, the person. You willing to answer those? I always like to have a little fun to end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. What's the last thing you watched on TV, and why did you choose to watch it?
Yeah, I'm actually at home right now with my visiting my parents. So we were watching The Good Doctor, which is one of the shows that they enjoy.
Nice. So you're watching it because your parents want to watch it.
I mean, it's a good show too. I mean, I've watched it myself as well.
So listen, we've been talking about AI, the future. Let's say your great grandchildren are listening to this years from now.
Mhm.
Any wisdom that you'd pass on to them and the concepts we talked about?
Yeah, I think that you can marry sort of the work that you do with benefiting societies. So always keep an eye out for that. And actually, one example, my own great great grandfather, he was actually the first person, first Indian person to study at MIT in 1905, and he studied glass making, and he went back to India and. He started this sort of glassmaking factory, which was actually meant to kind of do things that would be against what the British wanted to help India achieve its independence. And he collected money from a lot of people in order to start this thing, and it was not just to illustrate to the Indian public that there can be industry based in India, that it didn't have to come from Britain, but he also kind of educated a lot of people through a school in glassmaking, and it was, I mean, really remarkable how it contributed to the independence of India, and it was using the technology and technological aspects with a social cause, and I think that will always remain true, whether was in 1905 or in 2020 or in whatever 2100 or beyond.
Kush, that's fascinating. That's exactly why I ask these crazy questions, because I'll get an answer like that. Terrific. What do you work for in your free time? What do you do for fun?
Enjoy watching sports, and also I usually enjoy traveling. That's one of my passions, but in this calendar year, so it'll be the first time in my life, I think, that I've stayed within the state of New York for the entire calendar year.
Do you have a role model? Somebody not related to you, by the way.
I mean, folks like maybe like Leonardo da Vinci is, I mean, really impressive sort of how he was able to bring together a lot of different sort of topics together, really a Renaissance man. So folks like that, in a more modern sense, so Irwin Jacobs, who was the founder of Qualcomm, I think he's a pretty impressive guy, doing a lot on the social side as well. So I think, I mean, his life story is one that I mean, somewhat try to emulate as well.
Nicely done. Lastly, what book do you recommend most?
Yeah, if I were talking to you next year, I would recommend my own book once it's out, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I think one book that I read recently, I'm forgetting the exact title of it, but it's about how how our understanding of the world isn't exactly what the popular press makes it out to be. So, kind of if you dig into the statistics of where the world is, what the biggest challenges are, and where we've made progress over this last several decades, it paints a different picture. And so, I'm kind of having that understanding, and yeah, now I remember the title. It's called Factfulness, and I think that's a pretty interesting book.
Factfulness. Fantastic. I'm going to look that up. I'm a avid reader. That's on the list. Kush, thank you. Everything you've provided has been, you've exceeded expectation.
Awesome.
Greatly appreciated. It was a great discussion. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing how it turns out.
And for all you podcasters out there, as usual, you know where to reach us, almartintalksdata@gmail.com. And until next time, we'll see you on the podcast. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit IBMBigDataHub.com/podcast to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, let's go. Over and out.